Well, no one wants a Diamond 2 plus tier list. Let's be real. What people want is they want tier lists that's applicable to them. The best thing I could say is that for most people that watch YouTube content, or at least watch my YouTube content, they're probably not playing past Diamond. And if they are, they've already got their picks. But I think what we should do here is we should go line by line. And I'm gonna do this in a more chill way. My editors can clickbait and do what they want with it. Top lane carries, aka the best champions to play on 11.3. I think the way we should probably just do this is, I think a lot of people do tier lists in kind of a goofy way where they go like S tier, A tier, but you know, whatever tier. What we're gonna do is we're gonna just pick a bunch of champions that, if you're good at them, you climb, and we're gonna leave other champions out for this one, just to give people some ideas of what I think of each role and what champions I think are the most powerful overall. So the first one, I think this one pretty much goes without saying. I think anybody that's playing League actively probably knows what I'm about to say. I think it's pretty obvious that like Nocturne is just out of control right now. He's kind of a dickhead in that it's impossible to lane into him. The Stride Breaker synergy is just too strong. And his ability to just kind of, even after the nerf to his laning, he's one of those champions where it's like it's a really tough lane to ever beat him. And if you do manage to beat him, he's got a lot of catch-up tools. Just being able to like roam around the map, do like a shove into top and then run to bottom and ult somebody. He also is one of the few champions that can do a TP ignite. That is like, that in itself is one of those things where if he's ahead, he gets monstrously ahead. You can't beat him in lane by going ignite. He'll still stat check you. The Stride Breaker spike is really, really strong. And he pretty much just wins duels. He wins duels a lot, and there's not a lot of counterplay to it. I expect him to be viable for a while. He's at this point, he's becoming an interesting case study in how Riot balances, because for me, when I think about Nocturne, I think to myself, this is a champion very similar to like an Amumu, where he's very binary and he's quite easy to play. The only difficult thing that you have to do is, I think, the spell shield. Other than that, like, his lane phase is pretty simple to just utilize his passive to get health back. He doesn't have a lot of ways you can exploit him. If you're like a ranged champ and you play into Nocturne, it's pretty easy for him to just wait till 6 and then all in you. So yeah, I just think he's going to be a strong champ for a while. The reason I even brought it up like that was because like you have something like a Amumu who's super easy to play, but gets nerfed right away. Nocturne's super easy to play, but they've let Nocturne be viable in competitive even. So he's a very strange champion. And it's very clear that somebody at Riot has a bias. And I don't think that the nerf to his laning is going to matter all that much. I really don't. Because he's still really strong. It's gonna punish bad ones, but Nocturne will still be very strong. So Camille is one champion that belongs on this list as well, aka the tiny leggies. I think Camille is one of those champions that, while she isn't just like a automatic stat check win in lane phase, her laning is so reliable that if piloted by somebody that knows what she's doing, or if piloted by somebody that knows what to do with her, I think that she is she's a really tough lane to beat. And the true damage on her second round of her Q2, couple that with like Divine Sunderer, she's just a champion that, while her laning is a little tricky, it's basically just, did you mess up? As Camille, because otherwise it's really tough to do anything to her. And since she has such reliable engage from range, she could shut down she can get a lot of easy shutdowns for bounties. I've always rated her really highly, and then add to the fact that she can go grasp and win just about every lane. It's just really tricky to outplay her. Her R makes her untargetable which means that she can win pretty much any duel that she wants as long as she times her R correctly. And if she is going to lose a duel, she can simply just E away. She's got good laning, strong splitting, incredible scaling. And it's just a really tough champion to ever actually just own if she's played right. I would recommend to players in low elo to play something like a Nocturne, while I'd recommend players more in the upper end of elos like platinum and higher to pick up Camille. The reason why is because Camille has a lot more tools at her disposal to exploit players that are a little higher skill level. Nocturne's pretty obvious, but it can obviously he's easy to play and he could be played all the way up the ladder. But if you're a Camille player that owns, you're pretty much always going to outwin rate Nocturne, in my opinion, if you're like a really good Camille player. So Fiora is one of those champs where it's like, it's similar to Camille in that a good one, you can't really beat a Fiora in lane if played correctly. And I don't pretend to be like the greatest Fiora of all time or anything like that. This is a champion that I've been picking up because it's fun to play on stream. But the main thing here that you've got to recognize is that Fiora does not care what lane she faces. She's pretty much the premier laner. The thing is, though, with Fiora and the difference between, say, Fiora to these other champions, Fiora can't team fight for shit unless you have godlike parries. Because what's going to happen is if you go to team fight with Fiora, instead, because basically every champion with top laners, I always say that there's like a frequency, right? So if I play Nocturne, I can pretty much split like 70-80% of the time and then group 20% of the time off of my ult. But like Fiora, you really don't group unless you're massive, because in my opinion, what's going to happen is you're just going to show up, you're going to airball a parry, and then you're going to feed. You're going to fail your momentum and you're going to throw your shutdown away and you're not going to get any value. So this is another champion that is pretty high skill. However, even a newbie, I think, could get away with Fiora so long as they really stay tight to the rules. The rules being, of course, don't group with fucking Fiora. I really can't stress this enough. The amount of Fiora players that get massive leads and start punting games because they group mindlessly, way too high in solo queue. It's just not a good idea with her, because you can literally screw your entire game up just by botching a parry. If you take a 1v1 against a champion, you can pretty much always land a good parry. And if you miss the parry, it's not necessarily checkmate. But if you jump into 3 people and then miss a parry, like you can have those parries like in the YouTube videos that I've been doing where I hit like a parry and like a 1v3 and pop off. But like if you're not confident enough to make that play, you're just going to look like an idiot. The only reason I go for plays like that is because I'm making content. If you're really trying to win, don't group very often and keep your momentum on the side lane. This is one of my personal favorites for noobs. I've recommended this champion, Shen. Shen is another instance where, imagine you go to a casino, right? And I tell you guys, okay, we're going to be playing roulette and you want to beat me at roulette, but I'm the house. So there's a strategy in roulette. I believe it's called the martingale. I believe that's how it's pronounced. And so basically the martingale looks like this: is every time you bet, so you bet, $1 on red. And then the next time if you lose, you bet $2 on red. You bet $4 on red. You bet $8 on red or whatever. You're never going to win. You're never going to beat the house at roulette, right? You're going to have like a chance to come out ahead. And I believe it's like, I believe it works out to like 49% or whatever the hell the martingale is. But like the idea is that I'm the house. So you're never going to beat me at roulette. Like if we run 100 games of Shen, you are the house. The reason you're the house is because no matter what the fuck happens in the lane phase, no matter how bad you play, no matter how bad your teammate is, or whatever, if you play like a reasonable Shen and you ult the right targets, you are rigging the game in your favor. Shen is OP from a strategy standpoint. If you play reasonably and hit decent ults and know how to push lanes, you're going to win more than you lose. This is a concept that a lot of Shen players have not figured out yet. All right? It helps a ton if you understand like how just gambling, like probabilities, like how that works. If you stall out a lane and all you do is hold top tower, and every time your opponent leaves, you shove to tower and then ult to block their roam, you're always at an advantage in top lane. You always have that reliable advantage because you're impacting the rest of the map while keeping your lane contained. So that puts you at a statistical advantage. Now, you're not going to crush like you're going to crush with a Fiora, a Camille, or a Nocturne all the time. Although I could argue that if your laning is really good at Shen, you will get a good win rate because his laning's not even that bad. You're just not as strong as a laner as some of these other picks on the list. But overall, again, you're just a good bet. And you're not you don't have to play the game as super immaculately to like get an advantage as Shen. You're just a good, solid, like 55% win rate most of the time bet if you're playing correct. If you're losing on Shen, you're just fucking up macro most likely, or you're just a lane idiot. Because there's really no reason, even if you lose a lane, there's no reason that you should be losing more than you win. If you want to hear complaints from somebody who's really, really good, Drew Toot, I had him on my Summoner Speak. Listen to him rant about Shen and how terrible it feels to play against the Shen lane as a high elo player, because that guy will kind of put it into the mindset that I'm talking about here. Next champ. So this guy here is an interesting champion to me. And I'm moving him up the tier list a little bit lately. I've kind of underrated Sett for a while. But I think that he's a champion that kind of benefited from the Stridebreaker nerfs, actually. I know people might crucify me for saying something like that because they'd be like, well, Sett loves Stridebreaker. What the fuck are you talking about? Sett was already good before Stridebreaker came out. Sett was already strong pick into a lot of melee champions. He's a champion that is a lane bully and a lane blocker. You don't just stomp Sett very often, although I will say this. Sett will get owned by Nocturne because Nocturne can block Sett's W pretty easily. So basically Nocturne just stat checks you and then W's the telegraph W and wins. But generally speaking, Sett just doesn't lose a lot of lanes. He can either bully or block the lane. You play Lucian into Sett, he doesn't care. He's Sett. He'll just tank it with Dorn Shield and play his game anyways. He'll have a ton of utility. None of the hyper carries really own Sett. So like if I play like a perfect Tryndamere into a Sett, it doesn't really mean much to him. He's used a lot in high elo guys for a reason, and he's simple and reliable, which means he can also be used in low elo. So he's perfect for this list. And I've underrated him for a while. And I think he's a good champion to add to the list. I will spoil this list a little bit, and I will say that until Garen buffs go through, I'm not in love with Garen at the moment. At the moment. That could change, but Garen really did not like... Garen is not looking too great without a Stridebreaker, because at least with Stridebreaker, you had a cool little exploit case, but Garen is not looking too happy lately. But Sett, on the other hand, is kind of taking his place as just this like reliable bully pick that scales into a monster, super hard to take out a lane, and will pretty much net you good results into most matchups as long as you're not an idiot and you know how to use that W, manage that W timing, and actually get the value out of it. I really think that like these champions are just incredibly solid right now for lower elo players. If you notice, I don't recommend range tops a lot. You guys that want to get into Diamond for the first time, I'd recommend staying away from range tops. You're just going to get yourself into trouble, most of you, playing range tops. There are a couple range tops that are good. I can honorably mention Jace is good, Quinn is good, but I'm going to just be real with my audience. Most of you guys can't fucking play them. It's just what it is. I've been playing for a long time. I would stay very far away from these champions. You're going to botch lane incredibly hard, and then you're going to be useless. It's not as easy as you think to play those champions. Just because you auto attack somebody for the first 4 levels doesn't mean you're good at the game, and it doesn't mean you're going to carry a game. If you need demos of how to play a champion like Jace, I did have some matches a few months ago on it, but ultimately I've been playing for years and I know how to get value out of Jace. Most of you won't. It's really tough. You have to auto attack every time you're allowed to. You have to keep perfect spacing the entire lane phase. And then after lane phase, you have to maintain that lead and know how to work the map. And it's really, really, really tough. I do not recommend it. Not for the faint of heart. But I would say Wukong. Wukong's good. Can't go wrong with Kong. Essentially what Wukong does in solo queue is he beats up a lot of lanes. He can stat check a lot of these lanes. And he can kind of act as if you're a cocky, or I shouldn't even say cocky. If you're a confident, aggressive Wukong player with Ignite, you can get fed off pretty much every top laner in this list. Because you press E, you auto get in front of somebody and auto them all the way to the tower. He stacks up Conqueror really fast, and he just does really, really well in extended trades. And most players will underestimate the power of Wukong, and they will get stat checked, and then Wukong will build Sunderer, and then he will build Bruiser items, and then it will be impossible to come back because he will literally just monkey on your forehead every single time that you go anywhere near him. It's very rough. Very, very rough. So I would say Wukong is an honorable mention here. He can go toe to toe with a lot of these lanes. And if you're good at him, he can hang versus all these lanes. And he scales into a monster in his own right. So yeah, Wukong, I don't think needs to be much more said about it. And there's not much more to be said about his kit either. It's very binary. You E people. If you're winning, you W and get in front of them. If you're losing, you W and run away. Once you have 6, you win pretty much all duels because double ult is OP. I would recommend not going teleport on this champion though, and that's one of the reasons that he suffers a bit on the list, is because he's a little feast or famine. If you fuck up early, it can be kind of hard to come back sometimes. And most of all these champions on this list can afford to go teleport, or someone like Shen, even if you fail with Ignite, you can just block most lanes without feeding out of your mind and still be useful. You understand? My list has reasons. I know it looks like arbitrary, but it's not. So yeah, next up, this champion, we'll just say for the record that I've never been a terribly huge fan of this guy because he's super telegraphed, but I do acknowledge that he is a good solid newbie pick. So I would put this champion as like a pick that noobs can pick that don't have very good laning. That could probably pull this off. If you must play a ranged champion, don't play Jace, don't play Quinn, play this guy, so that at least you have some utility and functionality, and you can play into these bruiser matchups without just getting molested. This way, if you fail, you're not useless. Urgot is probably one of the best champions for exploiting bad laners. Because you just flip people and you win. However, you do suffer if you face a lot of these champions later through the lane phase. And that's the problem with him. Like, yeah, Urgot's scary when he's ahead, but when the match is even and you get to late in the game, Fiora and Camille and all these champions will just outplay you, and it's very, very tough. So he's an easy champion. I would recommend, if you really must play easy champions, go with Nocturne or Shen or something. But like if you can't play those for whatever reason, Urgot's an awesome alternative. He won't really let you down too badly. He will just get outscaled. Like Fiora will just run you over later. Wukong will just click on you later. Sett will just click on you later. Or even Nocturne will click on you later, and then he's gonna spell shield your flip. And so it's like, I don't know. It's a tier situation, I think. This is another noob champion. When I'm saying noob, I know it sounds like I'm being mean to you guys. But I'm saying noob because they're champions that noob players can get value out of, and they also do really well into bad players. So the reason why Illaoi is going on this list right now is that she got this buff that's pretty massive and is worth noting at the time of this video. And what they did was they gave her 10 movement speed. Now, for a lot of people, they're going to hear that and they're going to go, wow, movement speed doesn't mean shit, right? Those people are idiots. So movement speed is one of the strongest stats in the game. So the reason this is significant is Illaoi is a champion that if she gets ahead of you, it can be really, really tough to stop it. She is exploitable in the sense that if you're a good player, you can dodge a lot of her damage. And this is why she always struggles past Diamond. But like, most people can't dodge anyways, even if they know what she does. And now with the movement speed, you're going to be able to reposition a lot easier. You're going to be able to fight a lot easier. You're going to be able to run a lot easier. You're going to be able to chase a lot easier. You're going to be able to get out of and secure scenarios that you otherwise would not be able to. Movement speed is a significant thing if you can get the value out of it. And I think 10 movement speed is just an automatic mega buff. She's already a champion that if she's facing newer players and the newer player falls behind, it's just death by top lane. I've seen it happen countless times. So I think she's definitely worth putting on the list. This one might come as a surprise, but I think anybody that's watched streams and has had their favorite streamer get beat by this just fucking obnoxious pick knows that it's warranted. I have lost on Smurfs to this. I have seen good players get owned by this on streams other than my own. This pick is obnoxious. And what you need to do with this, you just go flash and barrier. This shit right here is one of the most obnoxious lanes in the game. And it's completely underrated. It's completely stupid to play into. You can't duel it ever. And if you know what you're doing on this thing, this thing is actually God tier. I swear I'm not being dramatic. I feel like every list video should have some sort of sleeper OP thing. I cannot beat this with most of my picks. I have lost with just about everything versus good ones. Now, obviously, you outscale it, but the fucking lane phase is so ridiculous that you just feel like the guy gets to do what he wants. Like, he can be at like 10% HP and still beat you. It's just incredibly tricky to navigate it. It takes a lot of spacing, it feels like, to beat it. It takes a lot of like understanding of what he does. And since it's so not played, I don't think people understand how to fight it, myself included. I think it's really tough. Really pisses me off when I bump into this. And it's happened so much. I've seen people feed to it so much that I had to put it on the list because it's obviously strong as hell. So last pick I'm going to put on here. There's a lot of honorable mentions here. We could have Jax on here. We could have, I'm trying to think of another good champion that I could put on this. So you could have like maybe a Renekton on here. But I think Tryndamere is a good champion still. I think he's really good for top. And I think that he, believe it or not, when you talk about bruisers, because again, I'm gonna get questioned a lot with this pick, putting him on this list. But when I think a lot about bruisers, Tryndamere beats a ton of them. Tryndamere owns Nocturne. Tryndamere owns Camille. Well, doesn't own Camille, but can very easily beat Camille. Tryndamere owns Fiora. Tryndamere can beat Shen sometimes, depends on the skill. Tryndamere can beat Sett sometimes, depends on the skill. Wukong, stat checks into oblivion. Urgot, stat checks into oblivion. This is a champion that is obviously an incredibly tempo champion and is one of my staples. But I just think that he plays, yes, he's hard to play, but he also just plays really well into a lot of this list. Tryndamere hates tanks. He doesn't hate bruisers. Do you understand? So Tryndamere hates Malphites. Malphite doesn't show up very often in this meta right now. You see a lot of this shit, and that's where Tryndamere shines. He can run over lanes, and then he can push really fast, and he can end games really fast. So I would really recommend looking into him. If you're a Tryndamere player, it's not a bad time to play him. Kraken Slayer is always good. Any of these stat check matchups where you just beat on each other, Wukong, Nocturne, Shen, you can just go Kraken Slayer Sett. You go Kraken Slayer and just stat check these guys into the ground with solid fundamentals. And yeah, I think he's solid. But again, honorable mentions, probably like Jax, Renekton. Bruiser champions do really well, but in my opinion, this is the list. Gnar, I'm not a fan. It's the same thing as range tops. Gnar is always incredibly overrated. I'm sorry. I just never see people play him that well. His transform mechanics too hard. I literally can lose track of how many times I've seen people smurf with this list, and I can't count. I literally cannot. I cannot remember the last time a Gnar has dominated a game. Darius sucks. Mundo sucks. Mundo was considered pretty hypey when he was released in top lane, but I just think it's because most people weren't taking Ignite into him. I still think he's trash. But yeah, that's my list here. So